Welcome to the Gumption Podcast, hosted by seasoned commercial real estate developer and co-founder of Gumption, Ward Neely. Every episode, he interviews commercial real estate veterans on the cutting edge of the industry for their story, insights, and wisdom. Today, we're joined by renowned Birmingham-based commercial real estate broker, Bryan Holt. Bryan is a principal at South Pace Properties and oversees their retail division. He's going to share many of the lessons he's learned over his decorated career. Enjoy the show.
All right, so welcome to the Gumption Podcast. I'm Ward Neely, co-founder at Gumption. Today we've got good friend Bryan Holt. Bryan runs and owns, we'll let you talk a little bit more about that, the South Pace office here locally in Birmingham. Retail focus, but do a little bit of everything. And then part of the RBN network nationwide. So right. Thanks for carving out time, Absolutely. Especially last minute.
Looking forward to it.
So we're excited. You know, the first couple that we've done have been super informative. But if this one's
I hate you're gonna have this drop off now. But
yeah, well, we'll edit something in for you, make you sound better.
Somebody else in here is perfect.
Yeah, but we kind of start with bio. As well as I know you, I don't know like full backstory. So how'd you get in the business? Why'd you get in the business? All that stuff.
Kind of backed my way into the business. I was a runner at a law firm in college, a big plaintiff's firm here in college. And John Lauriello, who founded South Pace Properties with Bill McDavid, his kind of quintessential deal was he'd go get a 10-person or 9, perfect scenario was the one I met him in, 9 partners in a law firm, took them out of a larger office tower, bought them their own building. They occupied the top 2 floors. South Pace leased and managed the other 8 floors, and South Pace got the leasing and management contract on it, and John owned 10% of the deal with those 9 guys. Except I was a runner at that firm, and I don't know, a couple of months before the move, senior partner called me in his office and put a big, giant, expandable file in front of me and said, there's a meeting here at 1 o'clock with the developer, Lauriello, the contractor, the interior design, the architect, the moving company, and I'm going to trial on Monday. I don't have time to mess with this, so you're going to run this move. Yeah. And I walked into the room, Lauriello kind of hosting the meeting, expecting the senior partner, and he got 19-year-old Holt. And so I handled that whole move, and 30-something years later, that law firm just moved out of that space, and there were people in their offices because that's where that 19-year-old kid had put them 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So that's how I got to know Lauriello, and for the 5.5 years I was in college following that, I was hanging out with those lawyers, having drinks with them before I went to class every night at UAB, taking political science classes, not knowing what I was going to do. And Lauriello was in the bar with us, first at John's restaurant, and then when we moved into the Massey building, the old Massey pub. Frankly, that's where I kind of caught the real estate bug, listening to Lauriello talk about what he did. Got a real job after college. My first real job, I went to work for a construction materials firm. We manufactured rubber roofing. Carlisle Centec was just outside the Fortune 500 at the time. The parent company was. It was a great first job. Super construction, kind of immersion into the industry and learning the construction industry sort of through a fire hose. Was kind of half technical rep, half sales rep, and traveled Florida. But I was with the company about 6 months before I moved to Florida, was in Florida for a year, called Lauriello and said, I hate this job, I want to come to work for you. And he waved me in. So I kind of backed in. I thought I was going to be doing, John's deal and what our firm is probably best known for. If you're 50 years old or older in Birmingham, and somebody asks you about South Pace, they're going to say, well, that's that firm that does the stuff downtown, the old buildings downtown, adaptive reuse, historic redevelopment. I, stupidly thought I was going to be Lauriello's right-hand man and show up first day on the job and, go mess around in brick buildings with cool exposed brick and, like this place, cool ceilings and all. And that's what I thought I was going to do. He gave me a desk and a phone and said, you probably ought to walk around and introduce yourself to some of these other guys. Yeah. Pretty typical of people my age getting started in the business. So started out doing really, honestly, At the time, there was another young guy in the office, Joe Schneider, who's a great developer here in our area.
Yeah.
He's a year ahead of me in the business. We started together, we paired up, and for a year, we worked side by side. And Joe was doing light industrial, so that's what I started doing. One day, somebody called. We had another broker in the office that left, and she had Tammy Johnson.
Yeah.
She had a relationship with the Bruno family.
Okay.
She went to work at AIG Baker, left South Pace, and she had a handful of retail listings, and she's the only person in the office that had them. And I was the new kid, so I had to take them over. And kind of how I ended up in retail. And then I guess not long after that, probably 6-8 months into that, I took a what today doesn't sound like a crappy listing, but 27 years ago, next to Continental Gin here in Birmingham, the little shopping center to the left of it, just before you turn into Continental Gin, that little shopping center to the left was totally empty except a thrift store that wasn't paying rent. And I got hired by the family to do the leasing on it. And pretty quickly, Family Dollar called. We did a Family Dollar deal, first one I'd ever done, first any kind of corporate retail deal I'd ever done. Guy calls back 6 weeks later and says, "Hey, you're pretty good to work with. I got to do. It's a Family Dollar real estate guy." Said, "You got any time? You got any room on your plate? I need some more deals around Birmingham. Can you help me out? You seem like a pretty good kid." All of a sudden, we did 6 more Family Dollar deals in like 8 months, and it clicked for me. It's like, wait a minute. I've been struggling with this for a year or two. That's the same dude, same deal every time, same letter of intent, same lease document. This got easier every time. We did 2 of them with the same landlord. It's like, wait a minute. What the hell am I doing messing around with light industrial and office stuff? That's how I got to retail.
Nice. Well, so crazy enough, that's shopping center.
Yeah.
Is a good friend of mine owns it now.
Okay.
And he's actually a Gumption customer. So full circle.
It's
there you go.
Full circle. And it was probably one of the best experiences. I mean, I learned a ton on that deal, had a really patient client, a really patient retailer that knew I was brand new at it, trusted that I was going to bust my tail, but knew I didn't know anything. So it was like, it's like having your dog on a really long leash.
Yeah.
Right? They could yank it back, but they let me run.
Yeah.
And it worked out. And that's how I found retail.
Yeah. Well, so another tagline on that property, because, it's old 1940s, 50s grocery store.
Yeah.
Had a full basement. And we were talking with the owner, and he's like, "Man, I got this basement. I don't know what to do with it." And I was doing the garage at Midtown project with Martin and Dick and Scott. And part of that project was tearing down the old Iron Horse Lounge. And they had this beautiful old like mahogany bar with like brass foot rails and all this stuff. And literally it was going to go in the dumpster. And I was like, "Hey man, like just take this bar and put it in your basement. If works,
do
it
something
works."
later.
And so we pretty much donated half of the stuff that got Mom's Basement started. Now
I was going to ask you, what is that space now? Forgive me for not knowing.
It's called Mom's Basement.
It's a bar.
Super cool, like dive bar.
All right.
Really, really big hangout for like local musicians and stuff like that.
All right. I'll give you one more story about that space.
Yeah.
It was a basement, and it used to have a conveyor belt because upstairs was a grocery store. It was the A&P grocery store. Had a conveyor belt. So like when we did the Family Dollar, one of the things we had to do was close that hole up and figure out structurally how to do it correctly because it was a big hole.
Yeah.
That basement was just full of junk. And one of the family members that owned it was a contractor. It's a Buhacker family.
Oh, yeah.
Rufus Buhacker. I think Rufus's real name is George. Rufus Buhacker, great dude. That's how I met Rufus. We put a young cabinet maker, was looking for space to lease, and we put him down there. He was just getting started in the business. I think it was Carlos Garcia, I think. A couple of years later, my wife and I bought our first house in Forest Park, maybe a year or so later, and Rufus is doing a renovation for us. And I said, why don't we get that kid in the basement, or you're building a shot. He built a beautiful, overbuilt custom kitchen in my tiny little 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath house in Forest Park. And when we sold it 3 years later, grew out of it, had kids, we made pretty good money and allowed us to move to Vestavia and everything, almost entirely based on Carlos Garcia, who got his start. And now he outgrew it and has done custom kitchens all over the Birmingham and Marburg area, does beautiful furniture. He's built furniture for us since then. Really talented guy. Got his start in the basement, in Mom's basement, I guess.
Yeah.
So that place has spawned.
Yeah.
Quite.
That's what's so cool about commercial real estate is it is just like this giant merry-go-round. We've talked about on other episodes how important relationships are, how important it is to maintain them, but like you just never know when something's going to come back around. And
I tell other young kids in the business, like, you meet kids all the time that are thinking about, well, they're interviewing with us, and well, who else are you interviewing with? Well, I've got an interview with this insurance company, or your insurance. What sticks out in my head because is a perfect juxtaposition against real estate, especially retail real estate. But in no other industry, like in the insurance industry, all the insurance guys aren't getting together and working on stuff together.
Right.
I mean, this is truly a business to business industry, and it keeps coming back, and you keep working with the same people. You can be in the insurance business and be really successful at it. And the only time you're going to meet the other successful insurance guys is at the award ceremony at the end of the year. Neither one of you want to be in.
Right.
It's like, that's not you're damn sure not getting better at what you're doing. Like, we're getting better at what we're doing because we're hanging out together.
Right.
They're not getting any better at what they're doing unless they're at an educational conference or that, like I said, the award ceremony they don't want to go to. We're all the time interacting with each other, doing deals together, coming back and doing the same deal again or a totally different kind of deal, or knowing what Ward's specialty is.
Right.
Sending people Ward's way because...
Well, and you really get to build that relationship when you're in the trenches with somebody, even though you're on opposite sides of it. 9 times out of 10, you're repping the tenant, I'm repping the landlord, vice versa. Yeah. Like, it's commercial real estate, so there's probably a crazy person somewhere in that mix.
Yeah, right.
And we're having to, like, team up together despite the fact we're on opposite. Yeah, it's like...
That's what it's all about, right?
Yeah. How do we make this... How do we keep this thing from completely exploding? Because it's like a ticking time bomb now.
One of the talking about relationships in the business, one of the best things that ever happened to me, and if this podcast makes it to one of these people, they're going to be blowing me up for saying this, but probably one of the best things that's happened to me in my career. Mid-October 2008, Starbucks sends somebody down from Seattle to meet in the Atlanta regional office. The Atlanta regional office ran both operations and real estate for the Southeast region. By October 2008, I'd been working for Starbucks for several years. Probably at that point done 50-something Starbucks deals in Alabama and North Florida. And they called everybody to the office from around the region. They had come to the office that day. There's a person from Seattle, the boss that all my people worked for, sat in a room with the HR person, and they called him in one at a time and fired him.
Oh, wow.
And it was a terrible day for everybody. Looking back at my career, it's one of the best things that ever happened to me, because what happened is the first guy, Taylor Warner, was the first development manager in Atlanta, to my knowledge anyway, for the Southeast region. And every time they kept expanding Starbucks, the first thing they would do is hand off Alabama, like the redheaded stepchild. You just got passed to the next guy in, right? Low man on the totem pole got whatever he got, and Alabama.
Right.
So when they fired everybody that day, they fired like 8 or 9 development managers, because it had grown over the 4, 5, 6 years, and I went from Warner through all those 8. They all got fired. They all showed up at other brands, and from that day, I've been hired at Burger King, McDonald's, Dunkin' Donuts, Chipotle, Outback, Cava, Zoe's, Cece's Pizza. God, I mean, there's probably 18 retailers that we've worked with. And then it just goes on and on. I've got a friend that collects music based on these Grateful Dead fan, right?
Yeah.
And the way he collects music is people that played in the Grateful Dead played with other people.
Yeah.
So who is it? Huey Lewis, I think, if I'm not mistaken. I might have this wrong. Not Huey Lewis. There's somebody else. I'm thinking, but they played in the Dead, but then they had their own band, right? So he's got everything that band did. But then the drummer in that band played, so he's got everything that drummer did.
It's like a family tree.
Yeah, and it's this insane collection of what used to be CDs. He had thousands of CDs 15 years ago, thousands of them. That's the way this business works. It's like trying to follow the family tree of the Grateful Dead.
Yeah.
It's so far-reaching, and it's gotten me a ton of business. And it's why I didn't like that whole thing back to the Family Dollar. I had been doing mostly light industrial and an office deal here or there. But if you put somebody in their new building, other than a retailer, they don't need you for at least 5 more years because you did a 5-year lease with them.
Right.
You're really lucky if they remember you at a cocktail party when one of their friends talks about needing new space. And the other part was, say you're putting an accounting firm in a new space. The guy you're dealing with is the accounting partner that drew the short straw at the partner meeting last month. He didn't know anything. He's the guy that has to deal with this. He doesn't know anything about real estate. Respectfully, he's an accountant, and I don't know anything about accounting, but I had to educate that guy every time. And then there's not another deal coming out of this.
Right.
Then you meet the guy from Family Dollar and do 6 of them in a row.
Yeah.
It's like, well,
if he ever slows down, he's moving over to the next shop and bringing you with him.
Right.
Yeah.
So we generally don't lose the tenant they worked for. Like I kept representing Starbucks for a while after those 8 people were gone.
Yeah, no, and those brands, I remember like banging my head against the wall specifically with that one because it's like, man, we're not making much money here.
Yeah,
we were kind of capped, but if you're executing on a high level for somebody like that,
yeah,
like I mean, every time you've been interviewed, I'm sure they ask for a resume to some extent.
Yeah,
maybe not you. I mean, I think
you're
still the king of Alabama retail. It's either like anybody's coming to town, it's Bryan or Greg. So you guys probably don't have to put a resume out there, but
you'd be surprised how many times I would like that to be the case, but you'd be surprised how many times we still have to do that. Yeah. But
you put stuff like that on a line, they're like, oh, he's good enough for them. He's good enough for us.
And, I wish I knew a really good way to go. We're far and away, our firm is a retail firm now. We're not going to stop doing the things that some of the legacy brokers in our office are still doing, but future of this firm is retail, and we're very much tenant rep heavy for sure.
Yeah,
because that's what I know. I sure wish I knew how to go get more. 28 years, coming up on 29 years in the business. I sure as hell wish I knew how to go get more tenant rep business, how to recruit that. All of our businesses is word of mouth referrals for the 99% of it, because I don't know how you figure out who the next Cava is coming out of St. Louis. You can go to St. Louis and study up on who the hot brands are or whatever and try to, but then you got to, A, convince them to come to Alabama, B, convince them that you're the broker they had to hire, and you don't even know if they were thinking about Alabama. It's like an impossible, they talk about the shotgun approach. Somebody at least told me where to point the shotgun, like what direction. It's very tough to figure that out. So I go back to all of our businesses repeat business and or is word of mouth business, and the connections in this business are not tough. They're maybe tough to get started, but if you foster them, it pays off.
Yeah.
Huge.
Well, that's a good segue. I think, when I came into the business 15 years ago, there's a really strong sense of loyalty. Like, do you think and to be a tenant rep, you've got to have loyalty from your client, right? And sometimes it's in the form of a tenant rep agreement. Sometimes it's just kind of a gentleman's agreement.
Yeah.
Do you think loyalty has slowed down, increased?
No, that's a great question. I'll tell you that I think the only company that South Base has a tenant rep agreement with right now, or only one of my clients anyway, that we have a tenant rep agreement. We signed one with Great Clips probably 12, 15 years ago, and I would assume it's still in effect in some respects. That was as much of an NDA as it was a tenant rep agreement. I had them in the past with other folks, but the industry definitely, at least in this region, definitely got away from it. Now I talk to my RBN friends around the country all the time and find out that, I don't know, Philly maybe, they won't have a second conversation with you without one of those maybe. But in this region of the country, they're pretty much unheard of, but so is screwing your tenant rep. Right. Having said all that, I routinely not routinely, it's not unusual to run into companies, and it happened last summer with us. We were asked, and I'll leave them undisclosed, but we had what I would call probably a national brand, certainly a regional, really national brand, ask us to do some work for them. We kind of knew their program and questioned it and about how they work with brokers, and were with them about 3 weeks before what we asked them about, and they assured us wouldn't happen, did happen.
Yeah.
You get these groups that think that the brokers are just out for themselves, and that they're somehow not going to show you, they're not going to be loyal to you, and they're going to somehow filter in their own way the opportunities that come to you. Like you're not going to see them all. And maybe there are brokers out there I'm sure there are brokers out there that do that.
Right.
But our big thing at South Base is the first time we put you in a spot and you do crappy sales, you're not going to do any more deals.
Yeah.
And so it's another way of saying it's like your success, like we judge our success by your sales performance. And if you do really crappy in sales, we pretty much know you're not going to do another deal with us, or very few, and it's going to fall apart quickly. So the idea that we're not aligned with the brand is really foreign to me.
Yeah.
I worked in an office that wasn't, but so we don't have a problem with not having. We're fine earning the business, and we've had very few problems in my whole career where somebody violated that relationship, and I'm getting a lot better about knowing when to say,
right.
I'm all about earning your business, but I'm not all about proving you wrong.
Right.
If you're already operating like that, me earning your business and having to prove to you that the way you're doing it, basically not using an exclusive broker, that's not worth my time anymore these days. I'm happy to earn the business to be your exclusive broker. To earn your business, to prove to you that you ought to have an exclusive broker, go to the next guy. Let him change your mind.
I think that's probably like almost like a change in corporate mentality. I'm very active in LinkedIn, so part of a lot of conversations. And recently there's been more chatter on like, who would you rather have, some mom and pop retail tenant versus a national brand? Yeah. I don't think it's a whisper anymore. It's out there. We had a bankruptcy last week. There have been a number of bankruptcies over the last 6 months, and I think probably more expected. My theory on that is, their rent to sales suck. They're private equity backed, and it was all about growth. It was never about logic, or it's a brand that hasn't evolved.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, some of the brands that are filing bankruptcy, I'm like, how the hell did they even make it this far? Like, what happened? I thought they were done 10 years ago.
Yeah, I would say when you see those headlines, how often do you go read the article to find out why?
Right.
Never. You know why.
Yeah.
It's the reasons you just gave, right?
Yeah.
It's like, they had the terrible ratio. That it's kind of obvious. They didn't evolve. I never find myself reading the article past the headline, and I was like, no shit.
Yeah. Well, and I'll give credit where credit's due. One that really proved me wrong was Chili's. Like, I would have thought, man, how are they even making it? And now they're freaking killing it.
Back again. Yeah, and I don't know the inside story. They do a lot of franchising.
Yeah.
I don't know the inside story on that one. But, Ruby Tuesday was a killer brand.
Yeah.
Until they started kind of getting away from what they did. And, having been there through that, it's kind of like, I saw this coming.
Yeah.
It makes sense. I don't know. I'm never really curious why somebody went bankrupt.
Yeah.
Maybe I should read that more. I should probably.
Yeah.
I'm a headline scroller, right? So I probably should read a lot more of the actual articles, but bankruptcy is never one I'm curious about.
Yeah. Well,
retail.
Sometimes you're forced into it if one of your tenants bankruptcy.
Knock on wood, that one's not happening to me.
I've been public about this, but Badcock was one of my tenants. Awesome company, like crazy good company. 110-year-old company. Everybody that worked there had been there for forever. Awesome people. Then they got acquired by Cons, which is this whole nother story. Yeah, did you know? Were you repping Cons?
There's a story behind that. I don't know if it's
probably not TV, appropriate for today.
Yeah. We did for a while. We did a couple of Cons deals, and then
but they, I was still dealing with the Badcock rep, and when the whole thing, like he and I built a relationship. I'd owned the asset for probably 5 years. He called me and apologized and said, "This isn't how Badcock does business," which is crazy.
That. Yeah.
I can't even remember if we discussed this on another podcast or not, but the guy like genuinely felt like that loyalty and that connection to the brand that he was embarrassed.
I totally appreciate that from the guy.
Yeah. And that's what I told him. I was like, man, this sucks. But you're an awesome dude. You're going to land on your feet.
And he will. And you'll get deals done with the new company he goes to.
That's right. But you look at that one, it's kind of like this, microcosm for the evolution of corporate tenants is you have a guy who's who comes from a company that's 100 years old. He's vested, and then they get bought out by a bigger company who
screws the pooch, doesn't know why the company was so great.
Yeah, or maybe somebody pulled a bunch of money out. I don't know.
Right.
And somebody did okay there, I'm sure.
Sure.
But yeah, interesting dynamic as this all evolves, and figuring out what tenants are the best tenants, what tenants are going to use.
Yeah.
Government opportunities to better their real estate portfolio, because I think that's the theory right now, is that some of these guys that are filing really just using bankruptcy as a way to renegotiate.
Yeah, they're just restructuring their company.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, they're restructuring the company and using the courts to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. When you get the answer, let me know on all that stuff. But
there's some stuff in this industry, I just keep doing what I'm doing. And I've learned over the years I don't always remember this in time or in real time, but to stay in my lane. Yeah.
Well, you and I both are big ADD guys. So it's like, I'm constantly getting told hey, that's not what we're doing right now.
You talked about local and is it better to have local tenants or better to have national tenants? I don't think I've ever met Frank Stitt, but I use him as a great example all the time. And for those of you not from Birmingham, he's Frank Beard Award. James Beard.
Godfather.
Frank won a James Beard. I think maybe more than one, probably several.
Yeah, he'd been nominated like 9 years.
But this is a big independent restaurant scene in Birmingham, probably one of the biggest in the country, certainly for our size. And he's kind of the godfather of it. If he called tomorrow and said, Bryan, I want you to help me find my next restaurant space, you'd be totally flattered, and you'd be like, oh my God, yeah, this is awesome. I'm going to do Frank's next restaurant. I need to remember every time, and he's my best example of, no, you don't.
Yeah.
Because Frank's not going in a shopping center. You're not going to be leasing from the same cadre of developers that I've built relationships with over the years. And there's no Frank Stitt letter of intent in my file system.
Yeah.
He doesn't have prototype. I'm starting everything from scratch. And while I would absolutely love to be the guy that did Frank Stitt's next restaurant, the truth is I'd be doing Frank a disservice. Moreover, I'd be doing my firm and the rest of my team a disservice by getting distracted on that. And every once in a while that happens again. And I'm like, damn it, somebody kick me in the shin next time I get outside of my lane.
Yeah. Well, along those lines, next time I try to launch another historic redevelopment.
You got it. You got it.
I'll do one of those. It'll take me, 3 years to get the
thing done. At this point, that's a lane for you. What you're failing to understand is you've created another lane.
I have, but unfortunately, I've done some like single tenant and out parcel retail deals that we make twice as much with half the cost.
Yeah, and that's where I'm going to with Frank, right? I can find Frank his next place, and it's going to be a success because it's Frank's place, and I'm going to be able to get the corner table hopefully every time I come in. But that thing would have cost me money. I can't tell you the number of those one-offs.
Well, it's historic redevelopments. If your debt's not good, but yeah, that's a young man's development game.
L'Oreal and I built a set of townhomes one time. Ask him about that.
Yeah. I think as you add kids to your family and personal debt and other places, your willingness to go out and do a historic rehab deal probably starts to dwindle pretty quickly.
I could imagine. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so one thing we always ask is crazy deal, like crazy real estate deal. It could be crazy good. It could be crazy bad. It could be crazy landlord, crazy tenant.
I mean, probably they're always crazy because I made somebody else a ton of money.
Yeah.
Right. In these crazy ways. The Palisades Stivers Ford deal.
Yeah.
Palisades is a shopping center literally on the border of Homewood, suburb of Birmingham. Not great suburb of Birmingham, great schools, but it's in the city of Birmingham. Across the street is Homewood. Shopping center is probably 250,000 square feet, maybe somewhere in that neighborhood. It's a Walmart grocery anchored center, and a bunch of shop space, but about 140,000 square feet of this thing, roughly, give or take, was virtually empty. It had been the main original campus for Virginia College. So it was one of these for-profit colleges. We got hired by Stivers Ford, who had bought Adamson Ford here in Birmingham. They bought the business, but not the real estate. It was downtown. They needed a new place to move it, but they had to stay in the city of Birmingham. Because of it had a lot to do with the agreement they had with the city of Birmingham on taxes, or they very much wanted to stay in Birmingham.
Huh.
But try to find 10 acres to do a car dealership.
Right.
Birmingham's pretty freaking hard. My idea was to go buy the Palisades, which had been rumored to be for sale, rip down the part that wasn't making any money, build the dealership there, and then flip the shopping center to somebody who wanted a shopping center instead of my guy who's in the car business. We made an offer. Long story short, it was already deep in negotiations. Turns out we knew who the buyer was. Little inside trick for you. A listing broker who's got a piece of property under contract, there may be something unethical about him telling you who the buyer is, right? Ain't nothing unethical about him telling you who the buyer's broker is.
Yeah.
And I've used that many times, and then let somebody tell me why can't you tell me that? That's not a secret.
Right.
That is how that came around. We went to the broker, and Will Aiken, Gary Farrell, and those guys were buying that shopping center, and they were under contract for about $500,000 less than we offered. Then we turned around and bought the part of it that had zero NOI on it.
Yeah.
Bought it from them for about 2/3 of what they paid for the whole shopping center. They lost no NOI and got 2/3 of their money back about 6 months after they closed on the center. And we built a beautiful Ford dealership with a separate Bronco dealership in a great area. They got their shopping center, which is absolutely humming. I know they're 100% full now.
Yeah.
And Stivers Ford is setting sales records every month, crushing it.
Yeah.
So crazy deal. I honestly didn't make that much money, but Will and Gary and those guys have gone on a couple more vacations, I think. And
yeah. Well, so we had Will on the podcast.
Okay.
He talked about that deal. So it's interesting hearing it from your perspective too. Funny enough, even though I guess Stivers paid, a pretty penny for it, still a great deal for them. I mean,
absolutely.
Hell, the parking deck alone is worth what they paid for it.
Yeah, there was a parking deck in the back of it. We saved that, like a single level parking deck. All worked out great. They've even had to get we've had to get them remote parking now already because they've already outgrown what 2 years ago we were sure was a big enough dealership. Right. We did a second deal with Stivers right around the corner from where we are now, their commercial truck facility. Turned out to be a fabulous deal. We hooked up with the guys from Graham & Company who bought the property. It was a brownfield property, also happened to be in an opportunity zone. And when the smoke cleared on that deal, my client ended up becoming an owner in the project with the guys from Graham, signed a long-term lease with them, and they've got a beautiful state-of-the-art 70,000 square foot commercial truck repair facility.
It's right here.
It's like really across the street. On the phone with Stivers the other day because we finally found an option for his remote parking. Hopefully there's a letter or a lease being signed today. But I'm trying to convince him, listen, man, we beat this up. This is the only option we got out there. And he laughed and he said, I've done 2 deals with you, and you were given Broker of the Year for both deals. And I was. The commercial or Birmingham Business Journal, we were awarded Broker of the Deal of the Year for the Palisades, and the next year we got Deal of the Year for his year. He said, I'm such a pain in your ass that they give you a trophy every time you do a deal with me.
Yeah.
I'm going to trust you on this one. So we just did a third deal with him. So again, that's talking about being outside of my lane. It is. We made some money on it, yeah. I'll be honest, if I was thinking again and being true to my own rules,
right,
the next Eddie Stivers had called me, I would be like, wait a minute, let me find you the right guy. Fortunately, we're starting to gain a reputation as having done car dealership work.
Yeah.
Which is funny to me because there's almost nothing specific to car manufacturing or car manufacturers in doing the real estate with them. I mean, very little. But we did crazy deal. We represented Coach Saban and his partner Joe Agresti on the Mercedes-Benz of Alabama deal. And then got a friend involved, and we did the Nashville Mercedes-Benz dealership up there. Another crazy, right place at the right time. Being able to to work confidentially and assure somebody that nobody's going to find out about what you're doing. We represented IKEA. It's okay to talk about it now because this is now about 5 years ago, but it's probably more than that, but probably more than 5 years ago. But for 4 years, we ran around representing IKEA in Birmingham. Nobody knew about it. We got it because secrecy was one of the biggest things they needed. And when they started asking around, we said, well, for God's sakes, we just represented Nick Saban with a partner based in Texas. And at the time, Texas was trying to hire Coach Saban.
Oh, yeah.
And so if it had gotten out that Coach Saban was doing anything other than coaching football, i.e. buying a car dealership, or worse, that he's partnering with
a guy out of Texas
that lives in Houston and has dealerships in Louisiana where he'd come from. I mean, this just would have been a nightmare.
Yeah.
Having been the linchpin in that, the early parts of that deal, and linchpin is not a fair way to say it, having been the best way for that all to get blown up, having been the easiest way, was me to blow that up, get it blown up. Having done that got us the IKEA work. And unfortunately, we never did an IKEA deal. But, that crazy, did a car dealership. Stivers called a law, I think it was his roommate's law school buddy to say, we need a broker in Alabama that's got experience doing car dealerships. It happened to be somebody associated with Coach Saban who told him about us. Now all of a sudden we're car dealership guys. I love it.
Yeah.
And I'll do the next 100%, but
just keeps following that tree.
It keeps following that tree, right?
That road is going to wind.
It's definitely outside of our lane. I don't know that I'd regret that one, but it probably wasn't the smartest thing in the world.
Yeah. It's funny you said it. Eddie said you're getting awards because I'm such a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
And I won't say which account this was, but I had one that I worked on for like 6 years.
Yeah.
It's a long story. The operator was difficult and had been for years. And despite the fact that we only got one store done in 6 years, I tried to quit the account multiple times.
Yeah.
And the senior VP from corporate would call and be like, listen, you're the closest we've got to making progress with this guy. You're not quitting. And he's like, I don't know what we got to do. We'll get you paid, but you're not quitting this account.
Oh, my God.
And, you're living in a commission-only world that's kind of like, I didn't know what to tell the guy. And I was young at the time, so I was like, 30 years old. This big-time C-suite guy at a national brand is telling me I can't quit.
Can't quit. What are you going to do?
I'm also not getting paid. And I got some pretty crazy stories from that account, but we'll save those for later. I want to jump into retail.
Yeah.
Everybody's been kind of crapping on it. And then now all of a sudden things are headed in the right direction. Right. Occupancy levels are low. We talked about bankruptcy and stuff like that. Where do you see retail over the next, 12 to 18 months? And where do you see rents in association with retail?
So I don't know how many other people you've talked to today or you're going to talk to the rest of the day, but every one of them is closer to an economist than I am.
Yeah.
What I'm seeing from my microcosm in our little world, our retailers are absolutely back. Now, I realize there's bankruptcies going on. Fortunately, we don't have anybody in our circle of clients that's dealing with that. Ours are hungry for deals. They're absolutely back. The election, I don't care where your politics are. I'm not asking about them, but I can tell you, generally speaking, every corporate real estate group we're dealing with is pretty pumped up, and they're out there doing deals. What's weird is, and they're opening stores. What's weird is, the rates not being aligned with attitudes yet.
Yeah.
I guess maybe they are aligned with attitudes. They're staying high because everybody's coming out of the woodwork to do deals.
Right.
And that's going to drive inflation if they drop the rates. It would just be nice if rates were in place. What we have gotten over is, we had this thing, I'm going to say, really kind of came off that cliff maybe 12 months ago where retailer wanted to be there, developer had the site under control, but they just couldn't get together. It's like, it's going to cost me X to deliver this space to you. And the retailers, a lot of them were saying, well, we can't pay that. We're over that hump. And we jumped from, I remember when we jumped to $30 a square foot.
Yeah. It's like
I remember the first $20 square foot deals we were doing, and it seemed crazy. It seemed like, I remember thinking, God, we went from $17 to $20 like seemingly overnight, but it was a couple of years. Then when we got to 30, it was like, this is nuts. That's a $10 jump in rents, and it happened over 2 years. This is crazy. Man, we've gone from 50 to $70 a square foot. We went from 30 to 40 pretty quickly to 50. We went from 30 to 50, I'm going to say, since COVID.
Yeah.
30. We went from low 30s to $50 a foot since COVID. And in the last 18 months for sure, we've gone from $50 to $70 a square foot.
Yeah.
And it's nuts.
Yeah. And that's wild to think, like 10 years ago, we were a third of that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, there were times in my career I was making a whole lot of money, and $20 deals was what we were doing. And I wasn't fussing about how much money I was making. We're doing $70 deals now, and I'm not making enough. But
right.
That has to do with where all my kids are these days. But
I told two partners on a deal. Gosh, this was probably 5 years ago. We had like a $32 rent on Highway 31 in Hoover, and I told my partners, I was like, a single tenant deal.
We got to get rid of this.
I was like, we will never replace this rent. Like this tenant goes out of business. It's a 10-year lease.
Let's put this on the market and sell it. We're never going to replace the rent.
We actually lost money. It's a long story. We bought before interest rates jumped. We got it low. We ended up having a foundational issue. So we lost like $120,000 on foundational issues. We ended up having to repave the parking lot. The city made us do a bunch of stuff with roof penetrations, a bunch of the old restaurant, like hood stuff. They're like, you can't leave. I was like, well, as a landlord, I want to keep all this because if these guys go out, highest and best use is probably a restaurant. They're like, no, you got to cap it. So we ended up having to re-roof the thing too.
Oh my gosh.
So we had, the trifecta of expenses we weren't expecting, and then cap rates just, literally the day we closed, they started climbing, and we lost, I think, $14,000 on it. It was, I don't know, $2.5 million deal. I was like, this is the best $14,000 we'll ever spend. And the only reason we it was as low as $14,000 is because Pat Luther was on the deal, knew we were taking a haircut, and he reduced his fee.
Yeah,
very gentlemanly consolation that he gave us to soften the blow a little bit.
Right. What about for you on the development end? How are you feeling about development and construction prices? And in COVID, they skyrocketed. The materials prices skyrocketed. The labor, all the contractors pricing went up. How do you feel about all that now?
Despite the fact that I'm still, a partner with a licensed GC firm, I'm not involved in the day-to-day very much. But I do think that pricing is coming down. What most people don't realize is that the GCs aren't making the money. It's most of the time it's the subs. And the subs are really like a commodities-driven component to the construction process.
Right.
And in most cases, if they have crews that are rolling off jobs, they're going to price their next one really aggressively.
Yeah.
And there was deal flow for, dang near 10 years where they just kept throwing out crazy numbers and people kept taking them.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And I think those margins are coming down. I know we had a fit out on a deal about 6 or 8 months ago, and the guy was like, hey, we'd really like to get this. I got a crew that's going to be sitting around for 6 weeks. And so, they were willing to get skinny on it. I think the labor side is going to come down a little bit, and the labor being the subs, which is really the profits that they were making, where, look, those guys were making, I don't think 35 and 40% was unheard of for plumbers, HVAC, electricians. And I don't think we're going to ever get back to where we were, but I think we've at least plateaued.
You don't think we're going to get back to, you don't think we're going to get back to where we were,
COVID numbers, no. Yeah. What have we had? About a 170% increase. I think Probably. If we're 150% of where we were in 2018, that's a great plateau.
Yeah.
Construction is a factor in the deal, which is a factor in rent. So if we were at $40 a foot, 150% increase is $60.
Yeah.
We're there now. So that's where things normalize.
Yeah. We've got some clients like Chipotle where, probably 5 years ago, our building shell cost was, $450.
Yeah.
Building shell on one of those right now is closer to $8.
Yeah.
Which,
it's hard to make the math work.
It's hard to make that. It is tough that we're making it work, but it's not easy. But just like, it seems like it should take a career, the span of a career to see prices essentially double.
And we've seen it in one cycle.
Yeah. I mean, I've got brokers that started with me 5 years ago that, are still, getting their feet in the business, and yet pricing's doubled since they've been in it. It's nuts.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, man, I appreciate it. This has been good. We got to cover a lot of ground. Thanks for the wisdom.
I can ramble anytime.
Yeah, no, this was great. So really appreciate it.
You got it.
Thanks, dude.
You can find out more about Bryan and South Pace at southpace.com. The link will be in the show notes. Thank you for listening to the Gumption Podcast with Ward Neely. If you are a commercial real estate developer, property owner, or investor in need of financing, then we can help you get better loan terms faster. Visit gumption.dev, that's gumption.dev, or email ward@gumption.dev. We look forward to hearing from you. See you next episode.